back to BLOCKTV, where it is time for cryptonomics and a closer look at the dreaded initials KYC, namely Know Your Customer, and needless to say, a hotly debated issue in the sphere, but above all, a current report by CipherTrace sheds a disturbing light on the lack of it in the sphere. And with more on that, I'm joined in studio by Asha Westrup-Evans, senior BLOCKTV correspondent and analyst with the details. Yes, when did this come out?
Okay, so this came out in their third quarter report, the CipherTrace third quarter cryptocurrency anti-money laundering report. CipherTrace, I can't credit them enough. They're fantastic reporting and data on the sphere. They get into the weeds of the regulation, how it's being interpreted, and exactly right, and how it's actually being enacted on the ground where the rubber meets the road, and doing that basic work that needs to be done to get good data across the sphere. So, yeah, the big takeaway from all this, a number of takeaways, but I'll start with the main one, which is that 65%, so approximately 2/3 of exchanges operating in the crypto space have either no or porous, as they call it, so not fully up to standard KYC, Know Your Customer standards, and are failing, 2/3, 65%, and are failing to meet their obligations under FATF requirements. We'll get into that in a moment, what exactly that means. So the fact of the matter is the space is woefully underhandling itself, and this will become an even bigger problem come June next year, June of 2020, when the FATF's Recommendation 16, colloquially known as the travel rule, comes into play. That's when the enforcement period begins on that, and companies will start being blacklisted by the FATF, effectively limiting their trade, largely in the United States, but also across the world, and their accessibility to banking services, international trade, and compliance with OFAC regulations, all sorts of things. So for those who don't remember, the travel rule effectively is what is required of banks and money service businesses at the moment across the regulated and traditional spaces, that requires them to transfer the details of who is sending and who is receiving the money. So
hence the KYC,
exactly.
Hence the Know Your Customer.
Exactly. So think of your account number, your BSB number. I mean, different countries have different standards, but it comes across a large standardized system that allows people, when you send a SWIFT code, when you send an IBAN, all these details have built into them information about who is the sender, who is the receiver, and this is held by banks in order to be fully compliant with these policies.
And just add on that, one of the things that the traditional markets claim about this system, that at the end of the day, it's the best due diligence about tracing. Is that money legit? Where is it coming from? Where is it going? Okay.
Exactly right. And the fact of the matter is they're going to have to come to terms with this in a real way in the near future. And I actually spoke with Mike Cowens from CipherTrace when I was in Singapore for Block Show Asia 2019, who had interesting comments on the matter. So let's hear Mike Cowens here.
I don't think it's a death nail for the industry by any means, but I do think it's a challenge. I mean, it's something that's new for the crypto ecosystem. It's something that the banks are very well versed in and have had to deal with for decades now. I think it's a challenge that the crypto ecosystem now has to rise to, and equipping themselves with solutions like.
But first of all, I just want to say, apropos what he's saying, at the end of the day, if it's 2/3, okay, first of all, it really cements the whole, it's the Wild West, as mainstream markets want to say. It's a fucking, pardon me, it's a free-for-all.
No, the strong language is called for in this situation because it really is, Yael. I mean, the US particularly, let's focus there for a moment where there's a lot of focus on regulatory compliance at the moment. FinCEN inside the United States says that under US regulations, banks and MSBs, that's money service businesses, which crypto exchanges most certainly fall into, are obliged to adhere to these travel rule conditions, let alone a slew of other regulations, and have been required to do so since the Bank Secrecy Act of 2011. So they're saying not only are they not in compliance now,
they've had enough time.
Never been in compliance, and they need to up their standard if they want to be able to work within the United States, and if they want to be able to, and by virtue of that, the world, because at the end of the day, the US is integral to the global financial system.
At the end of the day, the US calls sets the tone in that respect,
exactly.
And especially when it comes to the travel rules, whatnot.
Right. And now let's as well talk about what standards do exist at the moment, because so many exchanges out there have used what has been called to me and has been referenced to me in the past as what I call the Airbnb model, which is they think that KYC means a photo of you and your face holding a sign that says, Binance 2017 and a photo of your, all this,
which, by the way, as we remember, was something that was hacked and leaked en masse, showing wow.
But if you go to any bank in the developed world and you try and get a bank account opened, I can tell you right now, they're not going to ask you for a photo of your face holding your ID. That's not how true KYC works. It's an
not only that, in this day and age of clouds, what does anybody want their face with their number somewhere floating above? Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So, well, that's another matter, and the use of the fact of the matter is you run the risk by using these exchanges that don't have proper KYC of working alongside, using your financial services alongside individuals that may be sanctioned by U.S. Treasury OFAC obligations. You could be using the same exchange that's used by terror organizations around the world, that's used by money launderers or organized crime. And the risks that you put in keeping your finances tied to those organizations in an unregulated environment, no one would do that in the banking system. If that was found out that your bank had been, also channeling money to Al Qaeda, it would be a global scandal.
It would be a global scandal. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but yeah, it would be a global scandal. Let's understand that if one wants to play with the big guys, you can't break all the rules.
Exactly. So these obligations, talking about the travel rules specifically as a starting point, but these obligations are something that these institutions are going to have to come to terms with if they want to be able to move forward. Now, there are some also unique problems that exist within the crypto space, namely in the form of privacy coins.
Right.
So privacy coins, obviously, they highlight and promote anonymity, but they have effectively been sidelined or put as almost a blacklisted good by the FATF's travel rule recommendation, because you can't have that sort of...
You can't KYC them. You can't have that.
You can't do that. So there are solutions around it. There are proposed solutions in a number of technological systems that have been suggested to be put in place. But yeah, it's tricky, and the FATF.
No, it's tricky, and the FATF is on it. And I think that one of the key points saying when that travel rule goes into effect. Finally, with you, Ahmed, that report, apropos, 2/3 of the sphere. Is there some sort of a list that came out of the exchanges that are compliant?
No, the CipherTrace didn't seem to be naming specific names at this point. We're going to speak with their guys specifically, see if they will do that. But this report is more addressing the overarching sphere as a whole, not pointing fingers or naming names, but rather addressing the fact that this is a hugely problematic element of the space. This is something that ideally needs to be addressed. If you, as you said before, Yael, if you want to play with the big boys, you need to bring the appropriate tools and regulations in order to be put in check. Perhaps these are the sort of things that are holding the crypto industry back at its current valuation and its current levels of adoption. And if it wants to move into that institutional space, into that large space, into that mass adoption space, they're going to need to move forward with regulatory compliance. And
remember that one changed the system only within the system. Exactly. Asha Westrup-Evans, thank you so much for this report of Cryptonomics. Pardon me, we were BLOCKTV. We'll be right back.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.